Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wild Woman Podcast. I'm delighted today. I have an Irish woman from Dublin on the east coast of Ireland, for any of you who are not from Ireland, but I'm sure you know where Dublin is. And she's one of Ireland's top fashion stylists. I think the first fashion stylist I have had on the podcast. And we came to meet each other through our love of doTerra essential oils, and that may be something we touch on as the conversation goes on, because I think it's part of my journey back to sort of realigning with my true nature and the rhythms of nature and living a very natural life. And I think that's something obviously we have in common, and I'm meeting more and more people who are on that path. But Roxanne works as a fashion stylist independently. She has her own business. She'll tell us all about it. I know she's worked on RTE, the main broadcaster in Ireland, has worked abroad, privately with clients in advertising. So anyone who's probably interested in that whole field of fashion, I'm sure will have come across Roxanne. And more recently, it could be quite a while, has become very interested in slow fashion and has her own podcast, My Soul Style, as well, which I really like. And what I loved, I read, now it's a few years old, but I thought it was just a lovely description where she was talking about encouraging listeners to dress as their authentic selves and not be a slave to brands. And I think that's sort of symbolic of life, you know. I
Mm.
think we're in that time of really authenticity. I think authenticity is the name of the game. And it can sound very glib just to say be authentic, but when you start to live it and really honor what is true for you, and I think this is where, even though we only met briefly in Athlone at an event, I just straight away was taken with Roxanne's authenticity, and that is why I invited her on the podcast. I just felt it, and that is the thing. You feel the authenticity of people. It's not words, you feel it, and that's, I feel, where our power is. She's also a nutritional therapist and has been on her own journey with health, spirituality, all of that. So welcome, Roxanne. I'm really, really delighted to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Celine. From my heart to yours, it's such an honor and a pleasure to hold space with you today.
Yeah, thank you. And for those of you who may be listening and not watching, do watch, because she's sitting in a beautiful conservatory out in her. It just looks gorgeous. And of course, as a fashion stylist, even your garden and everything just looks beautiful. So, yeah, can we maybe start with, I just find it, I wouldn't say curious, but I just, how has this path evolved? Suppose, firstly, how you became a fashion stylist, and maybe, yeah, what was Roxanne like? As we'll start maybe where, as a younger girl, maybe, and just growing up and what you were like.
I think I was a complete and utter fairy, and I think the veil was very thin for me. Like there's photos of me where I'm in this little nightdress that had water babies on it, which is a story about these like little fairy creatures that lived in the water. And I used to look for them in the water. My biggest dream was finding a four-leaf clover, which I did find in my back garden, and I pressed in a book. I still have it today. Um, I had a very active and wild imagination. From as a little girl, I would get up on a Saturday morning and I would pack a backpack and take my grandfather's binoculars. And I thought the call of a wood pigeon was an owl. And I would go like bird watching and hunting for the owl in the garden. My dream as a little child was that I'd be able to communicate and talk to animals. I thought that would be like the most beautiful power to have. And as an adult, I realized that we can talk to animals, and that we do it with an open heart. And it's something that I feel. I feel a real closeness and a compassion to animals. And I feel that in this world where there's so much pain and trauma, I think they are a key to humanity healing our hearts. I think it's no accident that dog is God spelt backward.
Yeah.
And I have a little dog called Ziggy, and he came into my life a month after my father passed away in 2018. And for me to lay my hand on his body and to lay my hand on my heart, I realized that it really accessed me very directly to the portal of my heart, and was very healing. So, yeah, as a child, I was a dreamer. In school, I was constantly scolded for looking out the window. I wrote storybooks and painted. My brother, who was 5 years older than me, used to do cartoons, and we created this whole little world. We had this little fur creature that we called Furry Parker. He was a little tidbit of fur off a shawl, and we stuck these little bead eyes on him, and we created worlds around him and wrote storybooks about him. We fought like cats and dogs over him. And I used to bring it into school, and all the other girls in school would be fascinated with the world of Furry Parker. And yeah, when I got pneumonia, I think when I was 6, and I sat at home in bed with my mum for a month, painting and drawing the world of Furry Parker. So I was definitely in this world, but not of this world. And that got beaten out of me physically and emotionally. I had quite an abusive childhood, and I really struggled in school. I was diagnosed when I was in my late teens with dyslexia, but that wasn't identified in primary school, and I was put into the harm's way of a very abusive teacher who put me down constantly and told me that I was stupid. She had a table full of girls, 4 or 5 girls that had blonde hair and blue eyes, and she called them like her special girls and her wise owls. And it was weird. It was like living in a Nazi regime where people with dark hair were treated like as it was really, really bizarre. Something I've thought about a lot, and she physically harmed me. She physically hit me. I really struggled with, spelling and reading. And I lived in terror as she went around the class. And then it would get to me. And I remember on this one particular occasion, her hitting me and beating me, and my mum picking me up from school and me bawling, crying. And my mum being so upset that she crashed the car into the car of a parent of a girl who bullied me in school. And it was just like this layers and layers and layers of like wrong happening. And then this teacher who was like abusing me, shouting at my mum. And then the parent of the woman who was bullying me, shouting at my mum. And school was hard for me. I was a very emotional, empathic child. And I still am a very emotional, empathic girl. And I think for me, the creativity and the visualization I channeled into fashion. You mentioned before we start talking, you mentioned Chiron, and I have a very strong Chiron placement. So the wounded healer is something that I've carried throughout my life. And I've gone through a huge amount of trauma, and I've not really talked. I don't really go around talking about that, but it's given me a lot of wisdom. It's given me a lot of empathy, and it's given me a lot of compassion. So I healed people when styling in a very obvious way. So I may not have been a therapist. I may not have been like, a hands-on healer. But for me, restoring people's confidence and listening to them and holding a kind and compassionate space for them was really important, because I realized that the wounded feminine is real, and we have such distortions about our body. There's so many people I dress who have gone through major illnesses, menopause, cancer, sexual abuse, abortions, huge things. People tell me everything as a stylist, and I tell nobody anything. And that's why I've got to the space where I've got to, because I know when people are in my presence that they can feel that safety and that authenticity. And it's because I guess I've always been a people pleaser because of the certain aspects of the trauma that I went through as a child. So there's good and there's bad in that. And I'm a work in progress. I'm constantly trying to heal myself. But I think the coming together with the styling was an amalgamation of my innate creativity, and my dyslexia, and my wanting to help and heal people.
That's so, gosh, it's so moving to listen to you. It really, truly is. And I think, like you said, I can feel it. I can feel that space you hold and your authenticity here across. I always feel it across the waves with people. But as I said, I really felt it when I met you. And I mean, I could be, I wouldn't say guilty of, but often, when you hear of certain careers that it's like when I worked in a bank, people like, oh, bankers, or or you work in styling or whatever, there's an image that can come to mind, and it straight away did bring up sort of preconceptions I would have,
Mm,
and not necessarily negatively, but I just had a certain, maybe a superficial view about it. I don't know, but and then, excuse me, I met you and I was just like, whoa, this person is really, really authentic, really in her heart, really present, and I don't think it matters, as you said, that sort of career of being, or working in stylist, and you're really, yeah, that sort of nurturing space. I found just to share this, I found my hairdresser when I was going through cancer and I lost my hair, and I had a lot of hair and I had a lot of
mm,
curly hair. And it was the most, obviously vulnerable, one of the most vulnerable times of my life. And I was just so, I didn't even, and she just, how she sort of held me in that space and brought me into a
mm,
private room, and she helped me feel a little bit good about myself and just did really nice things. It just couldn't underestimate that nurturing quality. So yeah, how has that, in terms of what you said you've witnessed so much with all of the clients that you've met,
mm.
is there a sort of I wouldn't say a common thread, or what would you say? How long have you been working as a stylist?
Since
Roughly.
I was 19 and I'm 45
Wow.
now. Yeah.
Okay. But you've also studied journalism as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I did. I studied journalism in my 20s and I really got into it. I'm a natural writer. So for me, the journalism came very quickly. I think I was studying, trying to think when I graduated, like by the age of 23, I was writing for national papers across the board. Um, by 24, 25, I was traveling to places like Russia, Los Angeles, Greece, like all over the world, writing 4,000 word cover stories for the Sunday Independent. And it came so easy to me. And I loved feature writing because I think I'm genuinely interested in the human condition. I love people's stories. And people always opened up to me and they kind of told me, that's a talent. You either have that or you don't. And again, it comes back to, just being able to make people feel safe. So that came very quickly. But you see, I had studied fashion buying and merchandising before that. And it
Okay.
was like this desire, this itch for fashion to create, because it's like going back to that little girl with the vivid imagination who loved telling stories and loved going on adventures. I wanted to, through the modality of fashion, tell stories. Because there's great artistry in fashion, in editorials, and I guess in my teens, I started looking at those beautiful magazines, and I was just captivated by that world, fantasy. It's a world that's been extinguished now, I think, in fashion, but we'll touch on that again.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so I just was really drawn to that. And then I had this kind of bite point moment where I remember going into the Irish Independent offices. I had a lovely editor, a female editor at the time, and she wanted to meet me to discuss some feature or something. And I had loads of shopping bags with me. And she said, God, we must be paying you a bit too much. And I was like, oh, no, they're for a job. I do a bit of fashion styling on the side. She goes, I never knew that. And she goes, are you interested in fashion? I said, yeah, I've done, studied fashion buying and merchandising. I've worked for, different people. And by the end of the week, I have my own fashion column in the Irish Independent. And that, yeah, it was bi-weekly. I shared it with another girl. But I had other stuff that happened before. I've had such a long and winding career, and there's been so many cul-de-sacs and turnarounds and everything. But yeah, so the writing came very easily to me. But fashion at that time was not easy to get into. There was like a trifecta of older, much, much older people who had that industry sewn up, and it was impenetrable. And I didn't have any family connections, it just happened. And the keys, the doors opened very quickly. Like I remember I did a shoot for a bridal magazine. It was like my first kind of solo, editorial. And then off the back of that, the hotel, I think it was Mount Juliet that we shot in, they loved the photos and they wanted to use it for their wedding brochure. But the model agency that we used the models in were charging outrageous rates. So they couldn't buy the images. So I got a phone call from the American marketing director of the hotel group asking me would I come and style their campaign for Mount Juliet, which transpired into me traveling around America, styling for the Conrad International Hotel Group. And I was like in my 20s, starting out, like walking into these luxurious American department stores, having access to the keys to the kingdom, just having this amazing, like that was like my first commercial job. Like it was ridiculous. Like it just, and I always kind of feel like when something is in flow, it's in flow. So it was never like, it wasn't a huge struggle for me, either the writing or the styling. It just happened. And it's like, I really do believe in that, the 10,000 hour rule. Like you just get better and better the more you practice things. And I took it very seriously and I worked really hard at it. And I still take it very seriously and I still take it very hard. But Celine, the entire landscape of fashion has changed. And I knew it was coming pre-COVID. That's when I really started to move into ethical fashion and slow fashion. Just had this vision of everything changing. And I kind of stopped working with I stopped working with all the high street brands and I kind of stopped working with a lot of the bigger companies. And I started like just going direct to small boutiques and small Irish labels. It was just an intuition. I was like, just felt.
What was happening? What was happening? Was it because of COVID and lockdowns and people not going out shopping, or what was it that you felt?
This is before COVID. So I think it was my intuition speaking to me. And then COVID happened and I was allowed to work during COVID on some jobs. And if it wasn't for those personal relationships that I had built and those one-to-ones of boutiques, I wouldn't have been able to work at all, And then I started witnessing, like, it was like cards just falling down, all the high street stores were closing, all the UK big stores pulling out of England. And now what I'm witnessing is like the veil has been ripped off fashion and the luxury industry. Like some of the most expensive brands in the world, from Dior to Armani to Loro Piana, with their made in Italy tags, we're finding out that they're made in Italy in sweatshops with Chinese immigrant forced labor. And these, like Loro Piana, they've only recalled out last week 15,000, 25,000 euro cashmere jackets. And they've prided themselves in having a transparent supply chain from Mongolia, where the cashmere is farmed, all the way to manufacturing. And it's all lies. And I guess what I have been feeling for the past 6 years is, it's like, I feel like I just have to do this. And it's like, we're just like, we're going back to craft, and pure luxury to me is knowing who made your clothes. Pure luxury is going back to the natural world. It's to the hand spun jumper. It's to the respect and the honor of the farmer who grew the flax linen, to the weavers who wove your fabric and dyed, to human beings realizing how valuable clothes are. To feed and herd and protect those sheep, and to shear them and wash them and comb them and spin them and dye them, and the crafts people who weave them and knit them, and the ancestry and the heritage in our little Ireland. And all of that got ripped away from us. And we were beholden to the petrochemical companies of this world who sold us a lie. They sold us cheap fabric. They sold us acrylic. They sold us nylon. They sold us, all of these synthetic fabrics, which are toxic. They're carcinogenic. They're poisoning our lymphatic system. The microplastics are migrating to our internal organs, and they're causing clots, and they're causing heart conditions. It's really serious. And what's good for us, what's good for nature is good for us. And we need to remember the wool industry is healing in Ireland, and I'm so here for it. But we got to a situation where we could have been an incredibly wealthy country. And because of how we discarded our linen industry and we discarded our wool industry and we embraced this cheap synthetic fabric, we've lost that. So now we have to heal the planet. We have to heal our supply chain. We have to re-educate ourselves for the respect for those fabrics. Because right now the planet is drowning in plastics and microplastics, and it's poisoning our soil and it's poisoning our water supply, and it's killing us, and it's killing our planet. It's like we are, like the living waters of our body, our lymphatic system are being poisoned by the plastic, just like the living water supplies of Mother Earth are being poisoned by our plastics. It's not woo-woo. It's
No.
science. It's happening. And the horror, I mean, there was a big conversation about, there's a big conversation recently about the Irish players, should they wear a skirt or should they wear a short, and I'm like, wear whatever you want. If you want to wear shorts, wear shorts. But can we have a conversation about the fact that the shorts or the skirts you're wearing are made from fabrics treated with forever chemicals? So all these high-tech fabrics, the wicker way, the sweat-resistant fabrics, they're toxic. They're killing us. They're the exact same as the Teflon and all the scandal with DuPont, who poisoned our water supply. The entire world is forever more polluted with forever chemicals, and we're wearing them on our body now. Like there's an awareness around, Teflon and around our cooking supplies. There still isn't that awareness. Like I'm still a voice in the wilderness talking about this, and I'm not a nut job. This is very real, and I'm very upset that our young people and our young women in particular are going around in, Lululemon and Sweaty Betty in their sacred areas, their lymphatic areas, their groin. We've got fibromyalgia. We've got, it's polycystic ovarian disorders. We've got infertility, heavy periods, all of these menstrual irregulations. The forever chemicals in those leggings are playing, they're huge endocrine disruptors. So this is the next conversation. We're having this, we've had the conversation. Some people are listening about, slathering themselves in toxic perfumes and chemicals. And we would know this because, and creams and the lotions and the potions and the makeup. And then we're slathering ourselves in unbreathable plastic, sprayed and treated with heat-resistant chemicals. And the irony is that wool, that sacred fabric, it is biodegradable, it's naturally antimicrobial, antibacterial, it's naturally climate cool. And the amazing people in the wool mark industry and scientists are now showing, certainly for outdoors, for hiking, for sailing, for all of that, wool is the most powerful fabric for athletics.
Really?
And the future is wool. The future is wool. But it's big, and it's been, in Ireland, we're coming out of it now. Wool was considered a waste product. It wasn't, the farmers were dumping it in the mountains because there was no value on it. So we need to heal all of these supply chains. And I firmly believe with all of my heart and all of my soul and all of my being that we have the capacity in Ireland to be a centre of luxury and excellence, and that we have an incredible pool of talented designers and makers and craftspeople. We punch so far above our weight when it comes to creativity in this country.
Yeah.
And when we
sold out a lot on that. Sorry, Roxanne, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just I have that feeling now in every sense, and I was an avid knitter all my life, and I've been returning.
Amazing.
And my mother was a knitter, and my granny was a knitter, and I just adore it. I adore that weaving, that sense of, as you just, women sitting together and just being in a circle, and just how that brings you into your body and the creativity of it. I just adore it. But I did find it quite difficult to get wool for a while. I was getting, even now, and it's really expensive still to get really good quality wool. So I said, I'm going to knit less and just try and find really good quality wool. And I suppose that's been a bit of the issue. But there does seem to be a tide. Well, on one level, you can look out at the world and the country and go, oh my God, are we just selling everything about ourselves down the river? Or are we actually starting to value who we are, like as a nation, as a people, as a culture, all of that? Where's your feeling on where we're at with that? Because
I think that there's a seismic shift happening. And, I think that I'm witnessing the young people and the next generation of designers and their storytellers, and they're embracing like the symbology of Celtic mythology. You're seeing like in a very pop art way, like, whether it's like a clad or ringed scarf, but I'm seeing like 20-something-year-olds Irish people going around these scarves with the claddagh and with Celtic knotwork on it. Or, there's another label, Pallador, and they're doing like a knitted version of the Italian 90 Irish football jersey. And I'm like, there's something in the consciousness that's shifting where Irish people are remembering to be proud. And just what you were saying about women sitting together in craft, we were telling stories. The stitches in the Aran jumper, there was about luck and abundance and protection and productivity. And
Mm.
I'm really interested in this. Like I have a place in Mayo and I go there to heal. I love the land, and I go to there's a beautiful museum just outside Castlebar, and it's the Museum of Country Living and Country Life. So it's a very humble museum. And for me, it ignites that passion and that pride of being Irish, because it's about the thatched cottage, it's about the straw, the weaving, and it's about all of our old crafts, our fabric, gathering crittle, which is a type of seaweed to dye the wool, the beautiful scarlet petticoats, our beautiful linens, like all of that. And when I look at it, and I look at the beautiful, the shawls that the women, the Blasket Islets wore, that, Singh would have recorded in his photography. Um, I'm going to say something that I haven't really spoken to about it, but it's just an observation. So there's a paisley pattern on those scarves. And the paisley originally came from the Paisley Islands in Scotland, which would be very similar, fishing villages, very similar to our Blaskets and our Aran Island. But the paisley originally came from Iran and Persia, because in Muslim traditions, you can't depict the face of God. They don't have idolatry, like paintings of Yeshua, Jesus, or God or Mary. But what they do have is sacred geometry, abstract, beautiful prints. And when you look at that sacred geometry, it to me mirrors the work that Emoto, that Japanese scientist, did, where he examined water underneath a microscope, when water had been programmed with the consciousness of certain words. So when water was programmed with love, it became this beautiful, like a snowflake, in
Mm.
gorgeous symmetry. But when the water was spoken to in an abusive manner of hatred, it becomes this distorted, irregular shape that's quite ugly and ghastly. And I do wonder, did our ancients understand that the face of God they were portraying in sacred geometry was absolute pure love? And this symbology travelled through the Silk Road, through the traders to the islands of Paisley, to the islands of the Blasket, to the islands of the Aran. So our ancestors were wrapped up in handmade clothes, encoded with God's face and the word of love, hand woven by their ancestors.
Wow. Wow.
And then we move to today,
Yeah.
where our clothes are made in sweatshops by abused people, some who don't have passports, who are making a living wage, who are living in horrendous pollution caused by the fumes of the petrochemicals, by the dyes, which are poisoning their water supply. And they're made with polyester, which has been shown to be the frequency of death, whereas linen is a hertz of 100. Wool is a very high vibrational fabric. You see, imagine being out in the islands. They had pantooties, which are these little booties. They were made with leather, and they had these pantooties that they could balance on the rock when they were collecting the seaweed and the crittle. They were grounding all the time. They weren't in rubber soles and Nikes. They weren't disconnected from the earth.
Well, Ireland is a sacred land, and it always was. And you wonder, I think we're sort of
Remembering.
we're remembering exactly, and remembering in the sense of as well, I feel that more in my body now. There's a remembering that starts as you
Mm.
start to maybe awaken to this isn't what's going on here. Like you described as a child, I felt like that. I always felt like what I didn't even know what I was doing here. Like, what is this place? And I
Mm.
struggled to sort of fit in and went on my own journey with that and, had to go to many lows. Just to go back, because what you're saying, and I feel it, like it does feel like there's a lot of things collapsing and a lot of things beginning to sort of, there's like this web underneath of people. We're all connecting.
Mm.
This remembering is, if you look out at TV, you mightn't think that, but this is how it is happening. Both are happening simultaneously. That's my experience.
Mm.
Some days I'm like, what is going on? And then other days I'm so excited for
Mm.
all the connections and what people are doing. But do you feel, I suppose my question is what I've noticed more as I have embraced a more natural lifestyle, doTerra oils, just the fabrics, like you talk, being out in nature, all of the things that I didn't do.
Mm.
My intuition is waking up, my
Mm.
power, my voice,
Mm.
that unless that starts to happen, do you know what I mean? It's sort of more people are sort of waking up to that. What am I trying to say to you here? Really, that's an integral part of us waking up to who we are and remembering and taking back our culture, our identity, our ancestry, because it's down through our DNA. That's so. Are you feeling more? Are you sensing more of an openness to that? Like if you said sometimes you're out in the wilderness talking, and how is that changing? Because how are you? Yeah, how are you finding it?
Well, to go back to that conversation about the creams and the lotions and the potions and the
Yeah.
synthetic, like we as a human body, we're piezoelectrical beings. And this is scientifically proven. So we heal, like our bones are piezoelectrical. The impact of exercise and movement regenerates bone tissue. The movement regenerates our collagen in our skin. As our lymphatic system moves, the crystalline fluids in our body create this electrical charge. And we have a pineal gland in our brain, which is our master gland for melatonin, which controls our circadian rhythm. And it has calcite crystals in it that are hexagonal, cylindrical, and they have an electrical charge. But that electrical charge is suppressed because if we have a blanket of synthetic clothes around us
Mm.
and we are drinking fluoridated water, which is calcifying the cylindrical calcified crystals in our brain, we're shutting down that. So effectively, Celine, I believe as we awaken and we start removing the layers of toxicity that have been put on us to stop us from being effectively a radio transmitter. And I fully believe that all of us that are placed on this earth, we're like little radio transmitters. I sometimes envision the earth as black with these little lights, and we've all been
Me
dotted
too. Yeah,
far,
me too.
far
Yeah,
away from one another. And then it's like me, 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 me,
yeah,
me, me,
yeah,
me. As
yeah,
we come online, we
yeah,
find each other. But we have
exactly.
to be isolated on our own to be way showers. And it's really painful being a way shower because you're the one who's laughed at and called crazy. But effectively, what you do is it's like being in a jungle with a machete. You're the one who beats a path and you take the thorns and the cuts and the scratches for everybody else to walk by. And that's what we're here for. We're here as a purpose. If we don't shift this earth in our own little way, it's not going to shift. And we have the power to do that. And fashion may seem very, very superficial. And I've had my dark nights of the soul going, what am I doing in this industry? But the reason I was put into this industry is because it was dark. And I can't change it from the outside in, but I can change it from the inside out. If I have the courage to speak up and have conversations like this and challenge people when the whole world is going mad over a pair of plastic toxic leggings.
No. What happens when you do? What's the response you're getting when you do speak up and challenge?
I think mothers in particular are very interested. And I'm sure you find this with doTerra and with cosmetics. It's when women are pregnant that they start looking at the toxic load because the innate instincts kick in to protect their baby. And when their baby is born, they start investigating non-toxic products. And I think that something shifts in a woman's consciousness when they have a child. I think that can be an awakener in itself. So I would get messages from mothers very concerned about the school uniforms, which are all, synthetic now. I mean, back in the day when I was in school, I had a lamb's wool jumper and I had a wool skirt.
Yeah, yeah. And
But
the big, yeah, the big gabardine, I remember
and they
chick.
were
I thought,
wool.
no,
But
yeah.
it's funny, halfway through my education system, they brought in an acrylic jumper, and they brought in a polyester skirt, and they brought in a big puffer jacket. And it's funny, I had a black wool blazer, and I had the lambskin jumper, and I had the wool skirt, and I kept it. And I remember I had these cotton blouses that they used to be Peter Pan collar, and I always wore a pair of leather penny loafers. Instinctively, I knew not to wear the other uniform. I wouldn't buy it. Firstly, I thought it was really ugly. And I love things that are beautiful. That's but and that sounds really superficial, but it's not. For
No, no.
me, beauty is the handwriting of God. So
Yeah.
for me, there's a ritual about beauty, and beauty for me is very important in my interiors, in my environment, in the food that I eat, in how I prepare it, on the table I lay, in the way that I dress, and how I dress people. So in fashion, there's a lot of ugly things, a lot of gothic things, a lot of scary things. For me, it's always been about beauty. Always been about beauty, because for me, beauty is as close to the creator as we can get. I'm very inspired by the natural world. For me,
Yes.
plants and
Oh,
flowers, wilderness animals, they're so beautiful. They're so beautiful, you know? And I
yeah.
think a lot of the monstrosities of this world have been created through synthetic, materials by man, and there's something about it. It's like a face mail that's not authentic. Like you stand, in a beautiful architectural building that's marble and stone, and you know, you just have this sense of resonance. Again, if I can go back to the fact of us being like this piezoelectrical beings. I mean, Celine, what is our body capable of doing? I look at the ancients and, some of the sacred sites. And when you look at them from an aerial point of view, they literally look like a computer chip. And then we come on board and we feel that electrical charge. There's a transmission between the land. And our ancients understood that. And they understood the electromagnetic currents of the earth and the leyland, and where to design these electrical grids, so that we could come there in ceremony and have that frequency increased. I mean, like the pyramids, they're initiation chambers of
Yeah.
enlightenment. That's what they are, and that's what our sacred. And Ireland is full of it. Ireland has so many sacred sites, and they're so old.
And not always the touristy places, there's
No.
a lot of the, very more, let's say, remote that wouldn't be, yeah, on the trail. But kind of when you talk about that, I'm actually, so I want to just not make a connection there. So you talked about earlier on and a lot of the trauma you went through, and then how
Mm,
you've gone on and using your chironic wound and supporting and nurturing people. And it strikes me from my own experience as well. It was because we're all traumatized from the moment, we're sort of disconnected, we're born, so, and just being
mm,
alive.
absolutely.
It is through that trauma that disconnection happens. It did for me through alcohol, through loads of things. It just life was too painful.
Mm,
And so if you keep people traumatized, they don't connect with the truth of who they are. So all of us who are awakening, and we're all at different stages, have
mm,
gone on this, anyone I speak to has had to go to the depths and start to heal, start to reconnect,
mm,
go through the layers of their trauma and their pain and find the gold underneath it. And then you start connecting with everything, all that is. And,
mm,
going out, and if I go out on the earth, just even to say to people, if you're listening and you're going, because we hear a lot about, oh my God, this healing journey, and but that's so much magic in it too, isn't there? Like, I'm just having these intuitions. I mean, I'm following everything now, and everything is just going so fast. Like, it's just like click, click, click. I go out, I stand on the ground, I get, okay, you need to do this, and off I go. And life
mm.
still has its challenges. So, how did that, people might be listening and going, wow, this is amazing, and what you're doing. How did that healing journey, just to share a little bit of that,
Of
unfold
course.
on your own sort of awakening? I mean, maybe you never forgot, would you feel, or did you disconnect?
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, like that little girl definitely, got traumatized and emotionally, physically, spiritually, and part of a trauma is to disassociate. So I would have tried to kind of I suppose I possibly lost a little bit of that magic, and as I said to you, school was just it was brutalistic. It was horrendous. It really was, and I was getting it from all angles. I was getting it
And
at
nobody
home.
stood up. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Mm.
Nobody, there was nobody there to stand up for you. And in enduring that, was there? Was it like a very sounds.
No, no, it was very alone, and like there was in like my teens as well. I guess I always felt like a little bit of an outsider as well. I was looking for my tribe. I was looking for my people. I was looking for the artists and the storytellers. And I went to a very traditional Catholic Irish school where, it was either sports or it was, if you didn't play hockey, you had to play basketball. And, just it was very academically led. Um, if you did home economics, you weren't very intelligent. You had to do science. And again, going back to my primary school experience of that kind of Hitler-esque, them versus us, we were streamed, and it was very much four classes, and it was. Back in the day, I think it used to be called A1 to 4, but then they decided to name us after poets and writers. But everybody knew who the A1 class was, and everybody knew who the lower class was. So there was always that sense from the moment you stepped into the school doors of being stupid, and that narrative was ingrained to me all the time. And I think I'm very sensitive, but my body is very sensitive as well. And I'm gluten intolerant and dairy intolerant as well. And they're all things that I didn't realize till later on in life. The amount of gaslighting we get as human beings around that as well. People just don't want to accept that. And I can't tell you the healing I have had on a physical level, just removing those things. But the reason I bring them up is, the protein in gluten is literally, it's like glutamorphine. It has a morphine effect on the brain, where that's why people crave it. And you have casomorphine, so the casein protein is addictive. That's why the vegetarians always say the reason I'm not vegan is because of cheese, because it's so addictive and you crave it so much. And I really crave milk. I have it's so addictive to me. But that dumbs your brain down and dumbs your intelligence down. And I was going to school every day with white bread sandwiches and a carton of milk. And my intelligence, my synapses wasn't firing. And then I'm diagnosed dyslexia. So I went through my entire educational system feeling stupid and then being beaten up because of it. And then, going into school and, there'd be stuff happening at home and I'd be like really upset. I had this awful, awful teacher. And I had her for 6 years for maths.
God.
And my brain could just not compute maths. Like I just couldn't. And I always remember this situation where I came in and I closed my lacquer door and she said that I slammed it and I was, put out for detention. And stuff had been going on at home, which I won't go into, but it wasn't pretty. And I remember her best friend was the career guidance teacher. And she got the career guidance teacher to talk to me. And I thought I was in a safe space. And I told the career guidance teacher everything that was happening. And she went back to her good friend in the teacher room and told her everything. And the teacher said to me, she goes, I don't care what's happening to you at home. You don't come into my class with that attitude. And I knew that I had nobody to talk to in school. The teachers weren't safe, family wasn't safe, and my friends weren't safe either. So I felt very alone and very isolated. And it's funny, I met somebody, I was in school recently with a lovely girl actually, and she was saying that she had a good friend who she felt really protected her and guided through there. She goes, Roxanne, on the outside you just always look like a very confident, beautiful, accomplished girl. Like, so no, and to this day, Celine, like I keep my private life very private, but people don't know much about me. And I'm sure, like, I've been accused of being snobby you know, and stuck up. But it's not, it's an innate shyness and an aloofness. And sometimes it's been a mistrust of humanity as well, because there's been very few situations in my life where people have held a safe space for me. And that has been something that I have healed through, you know. And, you know, it's ironic that I'm in the fashion industry because it's not really a safe space either. But I said, you know, I do
But you're
really,
creating the safe
I'm
space,
trying,
it
I'm,
sounds
I'm
like.
trying. Yeah.
Isn't that such a gift? Like,
Mm,
just, I really get what you're saying as well. I always get an image when I sit down, well, all the time now, and I'm meeting more people the same as you. I get, it's like a flight plan, and there's all these lights, exactly that, and we're all just finding each other. And sometimes it's like a pulsing out. I'll just get this instinct. You need to contact so and so, or it's this week, and
mm,
things will be rescheduled, and they're always rescheduled just based on what is meant to happen and what that
mm,
person needs, what I need, what people need to hear. So
mm,
we are finding each other. And it does seem like you said that many of us, I felt an outcast all my life. A lot of people wouldn't have thought that of me either, because
mm,
we learn to put up, particularly if you're very sensitive. And I myself have judged people who thought were aloof. And they probably thought the same of me because I didn't feel safe. I think if you're very sensitive, so anyone who is listening, I think
mm.
we're finding each other now, and and finding spaces. I joined a drumming circle just to share.
Wow.
It happened again organically before I started the podcast, and it was there on Sunday, and we had it near the beach, and I walked away and said, I don't think I have ever in my life been in such an authentic circle of people. I have never met. We were all creeds, colors, you'd never have put us together in any other situation. But straight
Mm,
away, we just met each other like in such a deep place and so sacred and so safe and
mm.
held by a man, Eamon, a beautiful man, Eamon, who just holds that space. So I think there is hope for anyone who is listening and maybe feeling like I'm just going through maybe what you did years ago,
Mm,
Roxanne, or what I did going, there's more and more people. What steps did you take? So, like, describing that sounds so painful, like nobody you turn
mm.
to and your trust being breached. Where did you go then? How did you start to heal?
Well, when I left school, because I was dyslexic, I didn't have a particularly good leaving cert. And I thought, you know, I always wanted to be a writer at that time. I was always interested in fashion, but I was interested in writing. And I drifted. I did a year in the Gaiety School of Acting. I thought maybe that would be, you know, maybe if I couldn't write the words, I
Mm,
could speak them.
mm,
Um, and then I did fashion buying and merchandising. Which I had to fight to do. I ran away in the middle of my leaving cert because there was violence at home. I ended up sleeping in my friend's garage. Uh, my mum didn't even know where I was. She was thought I'd gone on a boat to England. So, as well as having learning disabilities, I didn't have the emotional support or a safe environment growing up. It was chaos. And it was really hard. And I was probably the only member of my family that stood up to my father when it came to deciding what I wanted to do with my life. So, you know, it's funny that I did nutrition later. You know, I had all these interests: fashion, writing, nutrition. And I didn't get the points to do nutrition, but I got the points to do, it was like basically what people do in Kerrygold when they create artificial flavours in a lab. Can't remember what the name of the course was. I went for the interview and I got it. And what the reason I went for the interview was I'd read somewhere there was a PLC course that if I did well in it, I'd get access into DIT to do the degree course and food technology. That was it. And the guy was all excited to have me. You know, I presented very well and spoke well and all the rest of it. And you're in. And I said, great. And how many years do I have to study before I can get into DIT to, you know, do nutrition? And he said, oh, no, you'd be going to study food technology, get your degree in food technology. I said, what about nutrition? He goes, no, sorry, that you can't get in the back door there. So I came home and I said to my dad, I'm not doing it. I don't want to work in a lab for the rest of my
mm,
life making caramel artificial flavors to put in processed yogurts. Not really my cup of tea. And my dad was like, by Christ, you'll do that course. Do you think I enjoyed my life getting up every day and going to work? And it's called work for a reason, and you have your life outside. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And I fought him, and I said, you know, I found this course in fashion buying and merchandising. It was terrifying. He was a terrifying man. And I had to stand up to him, and I had to say, no, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. And yeah, I did it, and I had to get 2 jobs. I remember I was working as a waitress. I was working as so I'd work like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I think, in a local hotel. And then on Thursday and Friday nights, I'd work in this bar in town. I used to cycle in because I didn't have a car. Because they didn't really want to support me because it's not what I was doing. Whereas if I had done, he's like, I'll support you financially. I'll give you whatever you want if you do the other. And I was like, no, I don't want to. So I suppose in a way, that's when my life started to change. And I started to take authority and push back from the patriarchal control and terror that I'd had my entire life. And then the healing, I suppose, you know, I went about my life. I did journalism, I did the styling, and I managed to attract a partner who was a narcissist. You know, Calcipre were groomed and trained as people pleasers. And I went from one narcissistic relationship to another. And when I hit about 31, my health started to unravel. And I started to get really bad pain in my kidneys and my bladder. And I mean, I remember I was going to a meeting in town and I collapsed on the floor. And it was like somebody was just stabbing me in the back, my kidneys. And it was such a time of unraveling. So what happened really was I started to get acupuncture. And I had no understanding about spirituality, or that world hadn't come into my world yet. And what happened with acupuncture, side effect was the emotional release, not the physical release. So I thought I'd just go along and I get healed. And I started to get all of these repressed memories from my childhood. Bawling, crying all the time. All this trapped emotion was coming up from a cellular level. I didn't understand what was happening. And I was like, oh my God, like the only people I can talk to is my siblings, because they're the only ones who had this shared experience, because you have all this shame, because you think it doesn't happen to anyone else. And now I realize we family in Ireland. There's abuse and there's violence, or there's, you know, whatever. It's there.
Everyone's touched.
Everyone. But we're all just going around pretending that we're perfect and not talking about it.
Yeah.
And I had so much shame around it, so much shame. And I felt I couldn't talk to anyone. So, you know, I tried to, and I also felt like, you know, my brother who just got married and his first child, he was like such a happy place. And I didn't want to bring him down talking about it. My other older brother. So, you know, I kind of spoke to him about it. And then I realized I have to get counseling. So I went to an amazing lady called Abby Wynn, who's a shamanic healer and a psychotherapist. And she does a little bit of hands-on healing. And I worked with her. And I remember a bike point where we spoke about, she said, you have to leave. I was being bullied in the job. I was being bullied because I just wasn't advocating for myself, Celine. And when you're so soft, you're a target. And I've had to learn to love myself and to advocate for myself and to believe that I'm enough. And until I learned those lessons, it was going to be a rinse-repeat cycle. And thank God I'm on the other side now. But at that time in my life, I was in an emotionally abusive relationship with somebody who was cheating on me. And I was in a job where I was going into the workplace and I was being bullied. I was actually being really badly bullied. And it was horrible. And I remember her saying to me, you're going to have to leave your job and you're going to have to leave the relationship. And I said, but I can't, because that's my whole world. Everything's going to fall apart. She said, it's going to fall away anyway. You have to let it go. And at that time, I was rushed into hospital. I was in so much pain that they did a cystectomy on me. My bladder was 2.5 times the size it was. And nobody knew why. Nobody could answer. So I left the job. I went vegan for a year to try and reduce the inflammation in my body. I gave up coffee, I gave up alcohol, I gave up gluten, I gave up dairy, and I gave up the relationship. And within 2.5 months returning to the specialist, he said, I don't know what you've done, but your bladder has returned to normal. And he goes, keep doing what you're doing, because you're far too young a girl to be this unwell. And, you know, I never looked back, you know, and I look back at the first niggles of those health things. And they all started in, you know, my late 20s in that really abusive narcissistic relationship, which I still work through. I mean, the level of coercive control. I mean, I was with somebody who, if I went to try to go for a walk during the daytime, he'd say, you can't go for a walk, you're going to be raped. You know, he checked my phone, he hacked my computer, he sent emails pretending to be me, and he hacked my Facebook book. Up until only recently, during the lockdowns, he was on, I didn't even know he was on social media, he was on my social media. When my dad died, started messaging me. When his father died, started messaging. Like, you have no idea of the level narcissists will go to, even though he's married and has children now. I'm like, what? Like, go talk to your wife about your bereavement. Don't come to me, you know. So I had so much healing to do. So when you talk about the Chiron and the wounded healer, you know, physical abuse, emotional abuse, relationships, like all of it. So I had to change every aspect of my life. And for 2 months, I was lucky in my career. There was kind of a wind down. And I took those 2 months where I literally sat under a willow tree. And I used to live in town, so I was by the canal and just listened to the water. I remember it was a very mild December. And I just spent as much time in nature. And I went to see Abby 2-3 times a week. And I did the work. And I did, you know, meditations, a lot of visualizations and all of that. And the irony is, I thought back then that I had healed. And then COVID came and the lockdowns happened. And I went through a serious spiritual awakening. So I thought I was really awake back then. I hadn't a clue. It was so weird. I remember being away with friends in Barcelona and feeling really spacey and finding it very hard to connect with people. And like, this is kind of the early stages of a real spiritual awakening, because you're removed from everybody, because you have to integrate this new version of yourself. It's like when your phone is downloading the new software, you can't use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go figure.
Happened to me through cancer, and I ended up on my own in my
Yeah.
house going, oh, like just everything fell away, like
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
So, okay, so this was happening because there's layers, isn't there? And there'll be more. Like, it's
Layers.
just layers and layers and layers. There's no,
Like
yeah.
2000, I remember the 1st of January 2019, I woke up with extreme vertigo that I had for a month. I remember I had to leave my car somewhere and I couldn't drive for a week. It was so bad. This vertigo, this spinning, this ear ringing, this frequency. And I just started having all of this, you know, information, these downloads. Like, you know, if you can imagine, you know, there's obviously this synthetic, the cloud that holds our information, but the ether, which is like this electromagnetic field around us, holds all of the information of the universe. And with our being this piezoelectrical being with this radio transmitter, this crystalline pineal gland in our head, once you tap into that, you have the frequency. And all of the most incredibly successful people in the world knew this. Edison used to sit in a rocking chair with a stone in his hand. So he knew that if he dropped the stone, he'd fallen asleep, he'd gone too far. But he'd be in a meditative state where he would be in the field where he could draw this information from the cloud, the organic cloud, from the ether. And he would, this is where he get his information from. And most people who are awake and they start getting this information, that's actually what's happening. And everything is out there. It's all out there in the organic cloud. So when you have an idea, if you don't act on it, it's out there floating around and somebody else will pick it up. And that's what happens. So I started getting huge remembering. So, you know, we talk about, you know, in the birthing process, you know, as we come into this earth, and the amniotic fluid, amnesia. all our memories of our lifetime is wiped. And I started getting memories, past lives. Like I start writing, being a plant medicine woman, being burnt at the stake and a witch in a past life. And like I had people who I met in meditation groups who are like, you're my mother in a past life. And we were attacked in a village and you protected me and you were killed. And I lived. Like, so many strange things started happening. And I started meeting, more and more spiritually awake people, which is really important because you feel like you're losing your mind. But you're not losing your mind. What you're doing is you're being exposed to another world that we're told doesn't exist, but absolutely does exist. And I really believe that, and I still don't have a full grasp of this, but all of the ancient mystery schools and all of the ancient civilizations, they had these incredible teachings and techniques so that we could practice our intuition and our telepathy and all of these incredible systems that this computer body that we have organically was able to use. And I think that there has been a dark and nefarious sect in this world who has hijacked that information and that sacred knowledge for power, and they keep it in their own societies and they have mutated it and inverted it. And you only have to look at some of the ancient mystery schools, like the Platonic, the Solids, in Pythagoreans, so Pythagoras' mystery school, where they were all vegetarians, they fasted. The information that they were giving, sorry, my battery just went there, sorry, the information they were giving in terms of, mathematical, because I also believe that maths has been hijacked. And that there is the maths is there in terms of nature, and whether
Language.
it's the and it's connected to music and vibration and the codes of this earth, and the golden ratio within seashells and acorns and all of that.
Yeah.
So the Platonic solids, all the dodecahedron and all of these shapes. And
you need to follow Robert Edward Grant. If you
I love him.
Just listening to you obviously do. Yeah. But you've obviously, a lot of this has come through very strongly for you.
Yeah, and I get memories of things.
Yeah, that it's just like boom. And as you were speaking it, like I studied maths and I didn't know why, and I'm not naturally good at, you know what I mean? I wasn't a mathematician, but I think I was searching. And like you said, I wasn't finding it there. And I've always then had a fascination with sacred geometry. And, before I got cancer, I did art therapy and all I could draw was spirals. I was just like, there was all this stuff coming in, but I didn't understand it. And it sounds like listening to you that that really has come in very strongly. Would you say that in terms of the information like, did you experience, when you said about losing your mind, like I felt the way I used to think, like that ego linear, the linear mind is sort of gone in a weird way. I mean, I can structure and do things, of course, but it's not how I function. And I found that quite difficult initially to go, information is more naturally coming in now without this sort of struggle of like, I have to learn this. And, there is a structure that has to be there in your life. And was that a shift for you? Because I found that a huge shift, how I process information, really.
Well, something has happened to me. I'm like my memory is astounding now for information.
Yeah, I'm listening to you. Sorry. It's just like it's coming from that place I know.
Yeah.
I'm there. You know what I mean? Like a place that I know I'm from. It's the same.
And for somebody who struggled in school, it's like, wow, it's like whatever veil, whether it was just chemical and nutrition that was dumbing me down and dulling me down, because my body is so clean and clear now, and because it's such it's a sensitive instrument, and I think that's kind of the curse and the blessing of the empath, because our bodies are so sensitive. It speaks to us very loudly. So when we get sick, that's our cue that your body is in dis-ease and that we need to bring it back into homeostasis and get that balance. So it's like, okay, so what do I need to add? What do I need to remove? What stillness do I need to bring into my life? Whereas I think a lot of people who are still with the layers and layers of pollution and chemicals and stress, they are not listening. they're so disconnected from source. They're struck down with the heart attack. They're struck down with the stroke because they're still in this labyrinth of being told there's certain markers that you have to hit in age, whether it's marriage, children, job promotions, pay days, pay grades, sending your kids to certain schools, going to certain schools yourself, ticking certain boxes of, degrees, going after certain professions, going certain places on holidays, wearing certain clothes, having a certain car outside the driveway, having a certain postcode. All this signaling that we've been programmed to do, disconnecting us from I would say, the millions of messages that our body, our electrical being body, has been trying to communicate. And if they had only listened and not said, oh, this is woo-woo or it's crazy. I mean, isn't it extraordinary that we still are living in a society where the vast majority of people, if you talk at a certain level, they still think you're crazy or they still think you're woo-woo. And they're the ones who are dying of heart attacks and dropping dead because they're not listening when source is speaking to them.
Do you think they're numb? Do you there's also that I've found that as well. And I was there years ago. I was in such pain. I numbed myself through everything and anything. And I suppose there's a divine timing, I guess, in all of this as well, because I spent, like I'm sure you might have as well, at times trying to talk to people about certain things and going, oh, I can't do this anymore. They're looking at me like I'm nuts. So I just had to withdraw. And I suppose that's part of the journey, or, the awakening too. It is all you can do is be you and let that be out in the world, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, people are numbing and they're caffeinated. If you hear all people talk about in work is coffee, 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 coffee. When can I get my next coffee? When can I get my first coffee? Yeah. And now people are surgically attached to their coffee cups. And, I think it's very interesting. I'm so happy to see the shift around alcohol and young people. We now have, I think, I heard recently, and I don't know if I'm right in saying this, one of the lowest levels of alcohol consumption in a certain age demographic. Really? So our next generation, that's going to be huge in their awakening. That's going to be huge in, because alcohol, the spirit in the East, they talk about it being a genie. And I fully believe that alcohol, you are open up to the field and that you can allow dark energy and spirits to hijack you and use you as a human flesh suit to joy around this time. And that's why people go, oh, I was drunk, I wasn't myself. I did something really stupid. You got into a fight. You said something really nasty. You said something abusive. You damaged property. You broke something. Whatever it is, and then people wake up with this residual shame. Like, oh God, the fear. People go, oh, the fear, and people laugh and joke about it. It's not funny. It's not funny when you actually break it down, that we recreationally do something where we're like channeling a darker energy while destroying our internal organs and zapping our brain cells. And it's actually antisocial. And we were programmed to believe that it was social. I mean, like I rarely drink anymore. I'm not like a teetotaler. Like I will, like if I was out, I would have a glass of wine with a meal. But I can honestly say this year, like last week, I had a glass of wine with Mum, and like we enjoyed it. And I was judging a fashion event, and I went out with friends afterwards, and we had a couple of glasses of champagne, and we had a great time, and I really enjoyed it. That was the first. April was the first alcoholic drink I'd had this year, and then up until we're in all July, hadn't had another. So for me, I don't need it, I don't crave it, I choose not to consume it. But I also I'm also like, oh, it's not that I'll never touch it, but I do have huge respect for what it is and what too much of it is, and that kind of mindful consumption.
And I think because I struggled with it for many years, and it's interesting, a lot of like what we're programmed with, I just found, and from what you described, it's really about a journey of connecting to source, to yourself, and realizing you're a sovereign being with, all of, yes, not poisoning myself, putting things in my body. But I was always told, oh no, there's something wrong with you, like having dyslexia or, you have
Mm,
this. Uh, and I always felt, no, I'm not going to be limited by any label. I've always
mm,
felt this all my life. Yes, we all have our own journey and wounds and things to heal. But once you reconnect and you're really solid in that, I feel you start to know what is okay and isn't okay for you. It's not
yeah,
because of, it's this sort of narcissistic type of template that has been over our world telling us we will tell you what's okay for you. And this is the process, I think, of coming back into know, I know. And if I choose, like you said, if I choose to have my glass of wine or I choose to eat
mm,
or whatever it is you choose to do, you're doing it from a place of your own power and connection. And, isn't that, I think that's
mm,
where I hope we're going. And
mhm,
that younger people, like you said, I know so many young people I know now are into fitness and they don't drink that much.
yeah,
My sense is they may not have to have the same brutal awakening that some of us had. Many people I have met or interviewed have had pretty difficult, really abusive
mm,
childhoods. And
mm,
like you said, this is the thing. I was listening back over some of the episodes and I went, and I'm not saying this about every episode and not everybody talks about it, but it's a common thread through
yeah, yeah,
everybody's story, whether they witnessed it or they were abused or so.
mm,
I'm not saying people need to talk about anything they're not comfortable about it, but
mm,
it's how we, I think, this narcissistic, I call it, or whatever, control matrix
mm,
is around us. The only way we break out of that is letting go of the shame and taking
mm,
back our power and saying no. No.
yeah,
I've had recent experiences of that I've never done in my life before, and I was terrified, but I had to do it. It
mm,
was like, but I was so programmed to believe I'm doing something wrong here because I'm upsetting someone.
mm.
Yeah, what's your vision around that, or what would you hope to see, and what can we do, each of us in our own way?
I think we're doing it and we're moving through it. And I feel that, the collective consciousness is shifting. And in the past 5 to 6 years, there's conversations that I can have with people that I could never have. Like even sitting in my hairdresser, like 20 something year old girl, and she's like, oh yeah, like talking about like I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I feel that like whatever astrologically is happening, the placement of the sun, the movement, whether you believe in the Kalalugia of these kind of like 25,000
Mm,
year cycles, which I do.
mm,
And I believe it affects the weather and we're going through it now. And I believe that information is light. And as we move in different ratios to the sun and to Sirius star, if the earth is bathed in more light and in more information. And as we clean up our bodies and become more of that conduit, we're receiving more of that information and more of that light, and it's activating our light body, which is what we are.
mm.
And
Our DNA. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So,
Mm,
and I don't believe in dormant DNA. I believe that, God, our creator, created us as a perfect being, highly intelligent, highly intuitive. I don't believe there was anything that was put in surplus to requirement. I don't believe that. I do believe in reincarnation. I do believe that we choose our parents, our name, our body, how we look physically. I believe we come here to learn lessons. And I think the lesson will repeat it until we learn it. And I think that that's the most powerful thing, is to take personal responsibility for your behavior and to sit back and reflect and go, life isn't happening to me and I'm not just the victim. What am I doing or not doing that's allowing the cycle to be repeated? Because if you still see the soap opera happening around you, whether it's a repeat pattern of falling into narcissistic relationships or abusive relationships, there has to come a point where you take a beat and go, I have to take responsibility in this dance. So am I not advocating for myself? Why am I allowing a person, why am I allowing me to put somebody else's wants and needs above my own wants and needs? How can I break this cycle? So I believe, and I'm going to say something really profound that I have come to the realization of, and it's given me great peace. So I believe that the people who have hurt us the most in this life, in our soul's journey, where we go back to source, that we make contracts with those people and they loved us so much, that they made the decision to come down to earth to teach us some of the most painful decisions. And we either have a choice to learn those decisions and to forgive and let go with life and go, thank you for the learning, and goodbye, and I release it. And to know that when we go back to source, yeah, I became that upward spiral of becoming. And thank you. And I know you love me so much. That must have been incredibly painful to act out that part in this play, in this All's a World's a Stage. And I really believed that. And, you know, in deep reflection in relationships that I had and my parents and things like that, you can only meet people where they are in this flesh suit and their soul, and they've gone through their own traumas and their own arrested developments. And you know, I look at my parents. You know, my grandfather was an alcoholic, so my mother grew up in, you know, an abusive, you know, tumultuous household. My father was severely beaten by a lay teacher to the extent that he had a stutter and had no confidence. And these people come together and they have babies and they play dress up in suburbia and go through all of the matrix systems of being told what it is to be a successful human being. Fundamentally, they're two wounded children grinding off each other's wounds, trying to rear children. And once you realize that you're, you know, because we put our parents on these pedestals of being like, you know, these god-like creatures, because they are our gods when we're babies, because they feed us and they water us and they shelter us and protect us, you know, or not. So they're our world. But as you grow up and you develop and you mature, you realize that they're just wounded children themselves, carrying their own unresolved trauma. And they can only ever love you as much as they're capable of giving that love. And if they were abused or came from harm, they may not be capable of loving you in the way that you want to be loved. But that's okay, because we have all of the love in the world to give ourselves. And that's the biggest learning of all. And it's been my biggest lesson. I always remember when I was little listening to Stevie Wonder's The Greatest Love of All. Learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. But when I heard that song when I was a child, I thought that was a terrible thing, because I grew up in Ireland and she loves herself was a negative thing.
You think, yes.
So I remember thinking that was awful. It's only now in my adulthood I'm like, that is the key to everything. Love your neighbor as yourself. You know, that the kingdom of God is within you. And to, you know, it's all interconnected. But we cannot function as human beings without self-love. And we cannot do our purpose. We cannot pour from an empty cup, you know. And, you know, as a sensitive empath, it's navigating that world. And it's going where I'm wanted, and it's leaving where I'm not wanted with grace and going, that's okay, but not staying to be abused.
Oh my God, Roxanne, thank you. Thank you. Such, wow, such depth, such wisdom, such truth, you know. And I think what I always find is you just feel it. I feel what you're saying. Such a place to get to with your family, the people in your life that, I mean, what you've had to go through to get to that place. I feel that for certain people in my life as well, even though there are still plenty of areas I'm working on. But that is the taking back of our power, isn't it? And that love, yeah, that I won't say much more on that because I think you've said it all. What else would you like to share before we finish up? We're just drawing to a close now. Um, what sort of visions have you for your own life going forward, and what would you like to be part of? Because it's nice to sort of focus on what we're creating now and what we want to create next.
I think I would really love to focus on bringing Ireland to be a place that celebrates luxury in Irish design and craft and fashion, and for there to be a home for that, and for there to be a value put on that, and for creatives to be able to live in Ireland and make a living of it, and for the rest of the world to recognise that, and for us to tell our stories to our craft and our fashion, and to be proud of all of our traditions. You know, there's so much, you know, we talked about our internal trauma. There's so much intergenerational trauma on this island because of the colonial experience, because of the control matrix the Roman Catholic Church put on us. You know, we're a deeply spiritual, druidic, native lineage who were very connected to Mother Earth. And our artistry, our singing, our music, our dance. And, you know, I love to sing as well. That was something that got me through my childhood. I was a high A soprano, so I was in choirs. I was in the RT choir when I was little, and I was in another choir.
Wow.
Yeah. But that act
The fairy is alive.
Yeah, but I didn't
Time for the fairy.
realize at the time that piezoelectrical current is activated through humming and singing. So your drumming circle is very important as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. There's major stuff happening when we get together and drum.
Yeah, and that vibration, the energy of
Exactly.
healing, you know. So
Yeah.
if I was to look at my legacy, I want a seat at the table in Ireland, remembering its greatness when it comes to craft and fashion, restoration of our fabrics, and a return to the natural world, a return to the respect and craftsmanship for weaving and making and sewing, and for the celebration of the beauty of clothes, and, you know, to move away from this. It's an insatiable, carnivorous situation we're in with Instagram, where every second there's a new trend. You know, it's cottage core or fisherman core, or, you know, hot girl summer core, or poochie summer, or whatever it is. You can never stay fashionable or keep up with the trends. I mean, it has to implode, because it's not fast fashion anymore. It's like, it's turbo fashion, and it's eating us. It's killing us. So we have to press the pause button, and we have to remember who we are, what we're about. I mean, I'm very fascinated. I was reading this paper, and it was about the 16th century in Ireland, and that the English colonials hobbled our wool industry and made sure that we didn't have the carding and sorting here, because even though we're a smaller country, we had much more sheep here than the UK did. And they knew that if we ever got our freedom, that we could have taken over the wool industry, because in Sheffield in England, they have all this worsted wool, and they have all these factories. They have huge industry, and we're in poverty. And we didn't have that. They made sure that was a colonial thing. They had so any ships going out of Ireland with glass or wool, they sent over a fleet of 6 ships where they confiscated our boats. They charged a tariff per weight of the goods on it, and they seized the weight. So all of our weavers and all of the people working in wool, they emigrated to Spain, and they elevated to Belgium as well, to the continent. They took all of that information. Like, that's why there's such great textiles in Portugal and Spain and all of that. Like, they killed that industry. And I want to rectify this. I want to bring back our greatness. I want us to remember how special we are, and what an abundant, beautiful island this is. You know, it's just like there was no famine. Like, I go down to Mayo and I read the history books down there. I mean, there was deer, and the rivers were full of salmon. You know, there was rabbits. There was more eggs being produced in Tormakeedy than where I am, than anywhere else in the country. People were growing their own vegetables, and we've been sold this pup of a story where we can't, or our wool's too itchy to wear. That's one lie. And then I'm looking at industries in England, and they have the blue-faced Leicester sheep, and it's just as good as, if not better than, merino wool. And I talk to people, and they say, oh, we don't have the right climate for merino. Yeah, but we have the right climate for blue-faced Leicester, and we're farming them here already. So we need to stop believing the lies that we're told, because we can grow our own food here. We can produce our own abundance, and we can produce our own fabrics, and we can be a centre of luxury and excellence here. And it's enough. I want the veil and the lies lifted off. I want us to be powerful and autonomous again, you know? And if I play a small part in that, that's I want to see it on the table.
Well, thank you. No doubt you will. If we take back our own sovereignty, I think within ourselves, we've a chance of remembering and taking that back in our country too. Because once you reconnect to that, you know we have everything we need. And
Yeah.
it is an abundant country and it's a sacred country. I've always felt that, and I've heard it
Yeah.
called, it's one of the heart centers or heart
The
chakras of the
heart
world.
chakra of the
And no
world.
wonder there's been a concerted effort to keep us sort of just numbed and small and out of our power. But
Mm.
I believe, like you said, with the end of the Kali Yuga and all these cycles, it's time now. Like I feel it. So for
Mm.
anyone who listening who does, in your own way, in your own life, we all have a little piece of the puzzle. That's what I feel. There's no
Yes.
competition. There's no, oh my
Yes.
God, I have to do what Roxanne is doing. Do it,
No.
do, as a woman said to me, just find your beat, find your rhythm, and follow it
Mm.
till the day you die, because
Yeah.
that's what I heard it described. I think it's the Stanislavski method of acting. I was writing
No.
about it,
Yeah.
and when they talk about find your through line, and I remember
Mm.
I was coming out of cancer so lost, going, I can't go
Mm.
back. And I wrote a book about this, the experience of it. But I remember reading that and going, it was a mime artist, and she was talking about it, all this idea of fine, have plans and visions and dreams, but this 5 year plan, just find the through line in yourself, find that thread and just let it will draw you forward in what you're
Mm.
meant to be doing, really.
Mm.
Because I always feel, well, God's source didn't come here to be the same in every single, bloody hell, there's an infinite amount of possibilities. So
Of course there is.
we
Of
are
course there
every
is.
unique color and,
Mm. And
texture there is.
and to trust the timing of your life. I mean,
Yeah.
time is a human constraint, and it's a nonsense. And it's like all of those, as I said, those points that these expectations that you're supposed to hit. Absolutely not. Life is happening to you now, and we are so powerful. Our thoughts and our words can change the course of our life in this now moment, and we have to remember that. And that's why you mentioned earlier about it's hard to believe with the news. um, and it's really important to hold compassion and love for what's happening in the world, and to send that love out into the world and send that healing to the world. But we have to remember we are master manifestors, and there is a dark and nefarious agenda that tries to hijack that attention for their own nefarious gains. And there's a reason why it's called television. It's television, and it's TV programs, because they want to program us to believe their outcome. And you start hearing, certain stories where they're telling you what's going to happen, and people go into fear, and they start visualizing it with our piezoelectrical pineal gland. We project it, and we need to stop doing that. That's one of the most powerful things that we need to do. We need to stop doing that, and we need to realize that that is not what we're here for. We are here to focus on the highest timeline for humanity, and it's a timeline of fairness for all. It's a timeline of peace, of integrity, of truth, of transparency, where we communicate heart to heart with one another. No more mind games, no more nonsense. That's a wounded child, and we're growing up into being beautiful adults now. And we don't play those games with anybody, not with one another, and not in the world stage. So when we see our global leaders lying to us and gaslighting and telling us falsehoods, and it's fantastic to see people waking up and calling it out. And everywhere I go now, people are saying they're turning off the news. Good,
Yeah.
good. That's not our highest timeline.
No. And it's not
That's
the news.
no, no. That's not what we're here for. So what I would say to everybody is envision the world that you want every day, every day. I mean, even like what I do often is when I'm brushing my teeth, I just walk myself visually through my day, whether it's walking on set and everyone being in a good mood, everyone loving the clothes, everyone being upbeat, everyone working harmoniously together. It's been a beautiful, productive day where everything's great. And it doesn't matter what you do in this world, you can do that as you're brushing your teeth. Visualize how you want your day to be. It's the most powerful technique ever. And in meditation, you can visualize what you want this world to be. And it's a world of peace and freedom and space for our natural world and our animal brothers and sisters. We're custodians of this planet. We're not here to rape her. We're not here to manipulate her. We're not here to dominate her. She's our mother. We're here to protect her. And once we remember that, everything shifts. Everything shifts. She's part of us and we're part of her.
Thank you, Roxanne. Everything has shifted today
Mm.
in me and in the universe, and I'm sure in every listener. Thank you so, so much. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you.
Thank you, Celine. It was beautiful talking to
Truly,
you.
truly, what a such an experience. Thank you so much. For anyone who wants to connect with you in any way, what's the best way to do it, or what would you like to
Um,
say about that?
I'm on Instagram. I'm just Roxanne_Parker. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. So thank you, everyone. Until the next time, thank you, Roxanne. Take care and have a beautiful, beautiful day. Bye for now.